Well, good afternoon. It's in the 90s and it's now raining. That'll teach me to wait. You may hear the thunder in the background. We've had some pretty terrific rainstorms and I may get cut short as the rain gets more serious. There are a bunch of things to talk about today, but what I'd like to talk about is the imminent release of an indictment charging Trump with the crime of basically trying to overthrow our government, overthrow an election, to replace himself as the duly elected President of the United States, that is himself for Biden, and in the bargain to break all sorts of constitutional principles and laws and to compromise this nation from that forward until perhaps this point when an indictment will be made public. We have to assume that Trump is named in the indictment. His lawyers have been spoken to, and the courthouse is abuzz. In fact, I have a case in that courthouse, and I was wondering today with the clerk for that judge, the law clerk, if that judge might get chosen to handle the Trump case. That would really throw us into a tailspin. But whatever judge gets this case, it's going to be quite onerous. I think it's going to be more complicated than the one in Florida. But I think it's going to have some very strong evidence for the three items that we expect is going on: the conspiracy, the obstruction of justice, and the civil rights violation, that is to hurt other people, as people did die in this mess. So it's going to be quite an undertaking. The time I was a law clerk in New York in the Second Circuit, which is how they divide the country in the appellate regimes, my office was next to a district judge, Gagliardi, and of course we got to know each other and so forth. Well, I was in my, quote, chambers, and he was in his larger chambers as a judge, and they pulled his name out of the hat to handle the prosecution of the Attorney General of the United States. And the court went wild, and everybody wondered what would happen. And I was in a position to have conversations with Judge Gagliardi, and he invited me down to attend the hearing when John Dean was testifying. But in that case, Gagliardi didn't know that he would be chosen. And I once appeared, when I did go to court, with him as his law clerk. That's the only way I could get a seat in the courtroom. So I think that this case is going to be like that. Law clerks will have an opportunity, perhaps better than others, to see the trial. They may give out tickets. There won't be any TV. There are lots of reasons for that. And, well, it's going to be a sensation. I also think it'll be, depending on what judge is appointed, it'll probably be tried quicker. And that judge will try to remove things from his or her docket to facilitate this. Now, there are a lot of questions about did the prosecution tell them when they were going to do it or give them a copy of the indictment. There are several processes by which the indictment is released. Having learned that Trump likes to jump ahead of the thing and talk about the upcoming indictment, they may withhold it from him and then release it to the world at some time. We're hearing less from him, and that might be his lawyers, it might be any number of things. But the way it works is, if you have a fugitive, you, quote, seal the indictment. And you do that until you have captured the person. Then there's no reason, really no reason, for it to be secret. But if there are other co-defendants in this case, they may want to seal for them. But the rumors are that it's going to be Trump alone. That's possible. It would make it a simpler case, make it a faster case. I think it might make it harder for Trump to shift the burden around the room, particularly since he's the one who profits from this whole procedure. And it is also possible that, somewhat like what happened in Florida, be unsealed the day that Trump presents himself in court. And the prosecutor's going to respect the logistics of getting Trump probably from Florida or New Jersey to the courthouse in Washington, D.C. The judge may immediately set conditions of bail that limit the kind of discussion Trump has been using, both to raise funds and to try to diminish the proceeding and gain the notion that this is an out-to-get Trump kind of event. Well, I just don't believe any of that's true. The technique of the proceeding is not, in my opinion, the most important thing. The most important thing is that we finally got to this point. Now, some say, oh, we were being critical of the Justice Department like we were wrong. We were right. We are still put in the precarious position of having blown 2 years on this thing. We're approaching the next presidential election. And that's a dumb move. It's a dumb idea. But until I think all of us had complained and put amazing pressure on the Justice Department, and the kinds of misconduct that you can expect and that we saw from Trump finally forced the hand of the Attorney General in such a way as they had to appoint Jack Smith. Now, they can say anything they want about when they decided to prosecute this case, but there was no prosecution really until there was the appointment of Jack Smith. And it appears that the most important other thing that forced this issue into the frontal lobe of the American people and of its institutions was the hearings, the January 6th committee hearings and their report. And I refer you to, if you don't want to read the introduction by Ari Melber, you should watch the video online, in which I had the opportunity to be with him kind of as a foil, to bounce off questions and so forth. But he made the best summary of this whole thing, including, in my opinion, the committee, because it was so accessible. But the committee report was in English, understandable, and fabulous. So you don't get to see that kind of thing all the time in reports from the government. So the people themselves, the January 6th committee, helped bring us to the point where we had to have the appointment of Jack Smith. And Jack Smith has proven himself to be no Mueller, in the sense that Jack Smith seems to have once, and now it looks like twice, put his finger of judgment on Trump and said, enough is enough. And that's what the nation needed. And we start to see the cracks in the defense. We'll see it politically too. But first it'll be the kinds of things that we've seen even in the last several days. Rudy Giuliani explaining that he got the activity of the election workers wrong in Georgia. That's important. The fact that now we're seeing the disbarment proceedings, echoes of what happened in Watergate when I was a young puppy lawyer and then puppy prosecutor. We have seen the fact that Georgia really looks like it's moving forward, and there was some rumblings today about security in Georgia, which is what the local prosecutor there had predicted would be necessary. So we are moving forward, and I have great hope that we're going to not just indict and convict Trump, but we're going to return Biden for his second term and shut the door on this insanity that is the MAGA corruptibles and be ahead of the game, somewhat the way Jefferson was with the Federalists. He fought the Federalists, which are now the Republicans in our time, and the Federalists fought him. But after 2 terms, there were no Federalists. And I'm not saying that we should get rid of the Republican Party, but hopefully this will destroy the possibility of this mad leadership by these devolved, dysfunctional, selfish, hard-hearted, lying autocrats. We've had enough of these people. We don't need them anymore. And we are going to beat them by the numbers that we are. We're the majority. We're going to beat them by the arguments that we have. We're going to beat them by the truth that's on our side. And we're going to beat them because we're going to convict and sentence this guy to time. And if you're looking for something to say going forward about Trump and what we should be doing, it is this man gets time. This man doesn't get away like Nixon did. This time we do it right. This guy has eclipsed anything Nixon did wrong. And Nixon did a lot wrong, which caused all sorts of reforms that the Republicans are trying to set back. But this will give us the argument, the wind in our sails, if you want to take a popular song, to close down these people and restore, or at least turn us rapidly toward the restoration of the Republic and our democracy. So, on this slightly rainy day so far, maybe they heard me speaking and I thought it'd give me a chance to talk. So, that's it for today, and perhaps I'll talk to you tomorrow. And so I say goodbye to you from my happy, glistening cathedral of trees, celebrating the imminent indictment of one of the worst presidents in the United States. And he's won himself a place among the worst leaders in the world. Bye-bye.